And Republicans are taking a page from President Trump's playbook. They've been meeting with our next guest about his ideas for paying down U.S. debt, rebalancing the budget. Join us now, Russ Vought. He was the director of the Office of Management and Budget under President Trump first couple of years and helped develop the former president's budget plan. Russ, it's good to have you on. And, we talk about how long interest rates stayed low. So policymakers haven't been in this type of situation in a while with rates heading higher. Isn't that something we might need to get a little bit concerned about, given the size of what our interest payments are going to be if rates do go up for the next 10 years? I mean, don't we need, this is front and center. And if we're whistling past the graveyard right now, we're going to have some serious problems.
No question, and we saw that with more evidence of that as the 10-year went up over the last 24 hours. And, people said on Congress when we were sending out budgets that had more presidential savings and cuts than any president in history, they were saying, we have these low interest rates and they'll last as far as the eye can see. And I think that's a reality that the Biden administration is not seeing. And they're going to put forward a budget today with that hopefully assumes real 10-year interest rates that are more realistic. And they're going to not deal with the fiscal situation that our country is facing. And I think all of the deficit reduction things that they're putting out is to hide the fact that they're facing $20 trillion in deficits. And their plan is to talk about insulin and put out $3 trillion in tax increases that are not going anywhere, when we're going to have a debate on the debt limit about spending and how to get control of spending. And I think that is how this administration wants to play it. They want to have a class warfare argument about bad proposals that tax unrealized gain. Fine, they can try to have that. They can try to draw Republicans into the Medicare fight one more time. I don't think they will take that bait. But this is going to be a debate about the bureaucracy, about spending cuts to woke and weaponized government that is aimed at the American people and saves money, vast amounts of money over 10 years. We had Speaker McCarthy on, what day is it? I guess we had him on Monday. He pointed out a total interest expense that we've had in history, $9 trillion, and that on the next decade, it's going to be $10.5 trillion. So we're going to have more interest rate expense in the next 10 years than we've had in, I guess, since like 1940 or so. So that's an issue. You used a number there, and I tried to come up with what the total debt will be given the spending that we've announced in the last 2 years. What did you say? You said 10 trillion? They're facing about $20 trillion in additional deficits over the next 10 years. If you look at CBO's baseline, okay, they may have a little bit of different baseline themselves when they come out today, but that's the order of magnitude, and that's what you're looking at adding to the national debt over the next 10-year period. And our point is, we got to start somewhere. We have to start making cuts to spending, and we've got to do it where there has been a total unseriousness on both parties' part to tackle any type of spending restraint.
The world, if you want to be really simple, and it's probably not true because, Republicans like to spend too, but is it as simple as Republicans would like to cut spending to deal with deficit or debt problems? Democrats would like to raise taxes and keep spending as much as they can. Now, it's not that simple because Republicans, neither party can really, hold their head high in terms of being fiscally responsible, I don't think. But do you see any inclination in the Biden administration to cut anything in terms of spending? They've got more to do right now. I mean, they got one thing done in the first year. They moved right on to the next thing. Then they couldn't do the Build Back Better to the size they wanted, so they did something called the Inflation Reduction Act. But they kept layering on more and more, and they'd be doing more if they had won the House right now. They'd be proposing more spending.
No question. I loved your chart that showed that their total spending kept going up, notwithstanding all of their arguments about our record under the Trump administration. Look, I think Republicans have largely attempted to prioritize other things more than spending reduction. And what I'm trying to give them is a path forward that makes progress by going after the bureaucracy that their own voters hate, as opposed to going after Social Security and Medicare. And largely, they are taking that advice And that's one of the reasons why the Biden administration is trying to put forward another tax and spend proposal as it pertains to Medicare to be able to draw them into the field. But here's the thing. There's going to be a debt limit. All of this is largely fake theater with regard to the president's budget rollout today. But there is going to be a very real leverage point that forces Republicans and Democrats to consider spending. And I think the only way they're going to get a debt limit increase out of the House is to go at a 20% reduction to discretionary spending, non-defense discretionary spending, get it back to pre-COVID levels, and to go at the bureaucracies that are so wasteful and so woke.
What would you cut, though? We don't have much, when you, just like you said, there's defense and then there's, discretionary, there's stuff that you can't cut, obviously, interest expense. There's not that much left. What could we find bipartisan support to cut? Nothing, probably. But if it's partisan, what would you cut?
Well, look, if you're the way you're going to approach the debt limit, there is nothing that's going to get Democrats to support a spending cut. Nothing, except for a debt limit increase. This is all about leverage politics. What do the Democrats want and need? They need a debt limit increase. What do Republicans want and need? Spending cuts. And in there, they're going to have to swallow cuts to the bureaucracy, the woke and weaponized apparatus, to be able to govern with a debt limit increase heading into an election year. That is the reality that Joe Biden faces. And in looking at it from the standpoint of, well, would they accept cuts to the Department of CRT or Department of HHS? Those are the types of things that are now on the table for no other reason other than the House is in control of Republican hands, and there is a debt limit that Joe Biden desperately needs. And Secretary Yellen is at some point going to go into the Oval Office and say, President Biden, you're going to cut a deal, and it's going to be soon. What's the best we could hope for in terms of debt to GDP over the next 5 years? I mean, we know it hasn't been this bad since when? After World War II or something? What is the number now? What's the best case scenario where we could get it? Is it going to go up from here? What is it, 130 now? What's the actual number, Russ? Yeah, we're in the 120s right now. We need to get that back down below 100%.
How are we going to do that? We're not going to do that with interest rates going up, are we? We're certainly not going to do it if we have the same strategic considerations that we've had and just focusing on stuff that won't be done. My view is that we have to get back into talking about balanced budgets. We can do that by focusing on the easiest to cut, then the next easiest, and then you start to get to harder, much longer down the road. But you've reestablished this notion of balancing the budget in the same way that families do across the country. Why not get Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos to pay for balancing the budget or part of it? You know what I'm saying? Why not raise some taxes on people that have, in certain people's view, too much money? Why not raise taxes to close the gap? Can't be all spending, can it? Well, I don't necessarily look at it from the standpoint I'm taking everything off the table. If they put forward proposals that make sense, what they have put forward, I don't think actually makes sense, of taxing unrealized gains. What are you going to do? Tax unrealized losses? These are assets that are fluctuating. And I also am not wild about incentivizing the wealthy to consume more as opposed to invest more. But as a general matter, this is a negotiation. I think there are things that Republicans will have to accept down the road, but they have to come to the table and negotiate, and they have not been willing to do that. Historically, revenues are right where they have been, a little bit higher, quite frankly, and the issue is spending, and that's where we need a bipartisan consensus, or at least a one-party consensus, to be able to go after it. And I'm trying to give them ideas on how to ensure that their voters are excited because they see the spending and they hate the spending in their real life. Okay. So you're going through life with a last name called Vought in this day and age. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? Pronounced Vought. Russ Vought. Vote. Thank you.
Get out the.
Get out the. No. Get in the vote.
Get out the vote.
Vote back. Yeah. Get the vote back in here. Russ,
Thanks,
back.
No.
Back
get out.